And as I said at the Travelers Championship, the PGA Tour is a meritocracy. It gives every player the opportunity to rise to the top. If established players fail to earn a spot, someone else who is hungry and talented is right there to take their place.
Is the PGA Tour in fact a meritocracy, especially considering the new changes to the Player Impact Program and the fact that the Player Impact Program exists at all? The best part of Jay Monahan press conferences are when the reporters ask him questions. I'll be honest, I like seeing them squirm a little bit. In Jay's answers, we're going to hash out the finer points of the new changes that are coming up and which points are still very unclear, potentially by design.
Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
If you raise your hand, we'll bring a mic to you.
If players don't play in the minimum required number of tournaments, does that make them ineligible for the PIP?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The money comes from three sources, Doug. I would say, additionally, our partners, our sponsors and all of our partners who want to get behind and are getting behind the direction that we're going in, want to be a part of the continued growth and evolution of the tour. They recognize that with the changes we're talking about today, the changes that we've made prior to today, and the direction we're heading in, we're going to be creating more value. And when you create more value, you're going to get more income coming into the business.
So Jay says that they will be creating more value in the future, and then he immediately switches up to when you create more value, as in it's already occurring right now, you get more income coming in. So that's a little confusing, but what it really sounds like is that the sponsors believe in the PGA Tour, so they're investing in them. A lot like what's going on with the LIV Golf Tour, where companies project that the LIV Golf Tour will become profitable, so they invest now.
So those are the three primary things.
Jay, you've said the top players are going to commit to these elevated events and the top players will be identified by the PIP. Is there a scenario where somebody gets into the field of one of these elevated events based purely on their status in the PIP?
This is Eamon Lynch throwing Jay a non-softball question, which quite frankly shocked me. This is the crux of the matter. Can you, through this new Player Impact Program, which was only instituted last year, and they're already changing the rules for it, can you use this as the criterion or as part of the process to be selected for these elevated tournaments, which you would assume, or would think at least, that these elevated tournaments would be based on your official World Golf Ranking points or your performances in major tournaments and not just some kind of weird popularity contest?
There's certainly a scenario where that would happen. I mean, you could see now some of those tournaments that have sponsor exemptions that...
If you just stopped into this video to see if the PGA Tour was in fact a meritocracy, you can stop watching now. Because that answer right there shows that it's not a meritocracy. So yes, as Jay is admitting to right now, there's a scenario through the PIP program where now you can get into these elevated tour events. But let's continue for the Big Boy Pants Golf diehard fans who want to know every nook and cranny that's available to know right now throughout the rest of this interview.
Use those sponsor exemptions in that regard. When we come back and announce what we're doing with those 4 events, where those events are being played, what the eligibility requirements are for, what field sizes are, these are a lot of the things that we're going to be working through over the next 45 to 60 days. We'll be able to answer that uniformly.
Sorry, could I do one other question? You have the $500,000 minimum that you're going to guarantee players. Have you run the math on what the actual likely cost of that is over the course of the season?
The cost of that over the course of the season is roughly $2 to $3 million.
What Jay is saying is that for a price of only $2 to $3 million more, the PGA Tour could have guaranteed PGA Tour players and Korn Ferry Tour players would at least have $500,000 so they couldn't, in some cases, lose money by playing golf. I know Travis Fulton had one of these Korn Ferry Tour players on his podcast, and he was saying that one of his other co-tour players made $80,000 last year, which sounds okay until that tour player started mentioning that these players pay out $3,000 to $4,000 a week in expenses. Another key point about the $500,000 is that rookies will get it up front, so you don't have to get into these weird deals with a group of old men who now own you, or which you can see already being played out right now with the guy who helped Tony Finau and his brother in the early stages of their career. At some point, the bill is due if you become successful. I think Vijay Singh also had a similar problem where you need money in the beginning of your career, someone stakes you, but now you're a huge star, now they want 30%. We can remove those weird Korean boy band contracts or deals and just give these guys a chance to show their true skills and really make it more of a meritocracy. Again, it was only $2 to $3 million. This could have been done a long time ago.
But that's not really the point. I think what we're trying to do here is that as you start a season and you plan for a season, knowing the monies that you have to invest to compete on the greatest tour in the world at the highest level, there's significant costs. So if you're not able to play for whatever reason, you have that as a
on the greatest tour at the highest level. And Jay's basically stating that how they've always done it is the wrong way because he's proud of himself now.
And then for rookies, again, coming out here and knowing that that's payable on day one, we think will help put those rookies in a better position to compete because they can invest in the infrastructure they need to succeed.
You've known this the whole time. Did you do this because of the LIV Golf Tour?
Alan?
Jay, since the PIP is now an important part of compensating the players, will there be more transparency in how it's assessed and divvied out?
Great question, reporter guy. There was almost zero transparency last year. I think there was actually a point where they weren't going to release it to a certain point, and then they finally released the top 10, and you still don't know the metrics they really use because you had these random Q factor ratings and you try to decipher it. Essentially, and I'll let this sink in for a second, this whole new PIP program is subjectivity masquerading as objectivity. They're trying to make it seem like these guys have actually earned something and there's something you can do to rate highly on the player impact program. It completely allows the PGA Tour to play favorites and have guys now have to suck up to the PGA Tour to maybe get a little bit of a pat on the head at the end and get a little cut of that player impact program money. What's also interesting to note, as it's been expanded to 20 players, is how many players were in that player meeting? 23. It's amazing how the numbers pretty much match up. Sorry, Ricky Fowler. Maybe you won't be getting that money.
Yeah, I believe there will be. I think that there's, we've shared the results in the past or last year with the membership. Clearly, as we make this transition and enlarge the number of players that are eligible for it, I expect that there will be even greater interest from a player standpoint.
Well, Jay, it's great that they have interest, but can they do anything to actually elevate their standings in the player impact program? Last year, you had the social media aspect, which I think you neg now. So there is no more social media aspect to the player impact program. That benefited Bryson DeChambeau, and is that why you nixed it and really removed any type of metrics so that you can just give this money to the players you want to give it to? Bigger issue with the player impact program. Is this essentially just appearance fees not called appearance fees, because you're not going to have real transparency, and no one's going to know how you're calculating these metrics because you're going to outsource it to some random marketing firm. No one's going to be able to go through the numbers, and you're going to cook the books potentially. I'm not accusing you. Is it possible that you're going to cook the books and just give this money out to the players you consider the most popular, the ones you want to have in the fields, and now you can say that this is a meritocracy and that you don't have to call it appearance fees, and you can start using the phrase sponsors exemption less, because now you can say, hey, this guy earned it. He wasn't exempted by a sponsor. This is just another obsequious way to, I think I used that word right, obsequious, to work around players who are big names but aren't pulling their weight in terms of what we would think of as meritocracy in golf, which would be performing well on a golf course.
Player by player. But that's something that we'll continue to think through, particularly as we've changed the criteria. I think the introduction of 2 awareness surveys that are delivered by MARC that really focus on core fans and the general population, I think will lead back to an even stronger competitive element to the player impact program.
Again, doesn't make any sense. What are you going to do as a player to push yourself up in the player impact program rankings so that you can get into these elevated tour events?
Can I just follow up real quick? Now that you're identifying top players and you're rewarding them, is there some concern on your part that there'll be a cleave between the best players on tour and the guys who are trying to get to that place?
I don't have that concern, and I don't have that concern because the spirit of what we're doing here, number one, every player that's a member of the PGA Tour has the full capability of being a top player.
Every member on the PGA Tour can improve their skills and shoot better scores, but that doesn't necessarily move them up in the player impact program.
And we create a competitive platform that allows them to do that.
You did not create a competitive platform that allows them to do that. That's golf. That's the competitive platform. By using a different system, you've now introduced the variable of popularity or other subjective elements that you can now rig to give payments out to 20 players that of your choosing and divvy up $100 million. Everyone can see what's going on.
And that is always going to be the case. And additionally, I think the spirit of what's being talked about is that every single member of the PGA Tour is going to benefit from the changes that we're going to be making.
Let's see how this plays out. I can see the top 20 guys getting their pit money benefiting more, but now if it becomes more of an exclusive tiered club, you got almost a caste system. You got the top players getting all this preferential treatment, sucking up the majority of the money. Let's see how it plays out for the guys who are 50, 60 to 100, 120 on the list. Let's see how many of them benefit from the PIP program that aren't named, for example, Ricky Fowler.
Rising tides. Everything
Wow. Now Jay Monahan is on the Rising Tides boat, but he wasn't on the A Rising Tide Raises All Boats when it came to live. When it came to live, he was positive they weren't growing the game.
tour is going to continue to grow by having the best players in the world committed to it, by us continuing to lean into and invest in our ethos, which is the single best competitive platform.
Which is directly contradicted by the fact that you've created this player impact program.
Be able to generate more value when you add on top of that what we stand for and why companies around the world invest in the PGA Tour. So our commitment is to grow earnings across the membership. There's no doubt that earnings at the highest end of the membership have and will continue to grow at an accelerated level.
Grow at an accelerated level. Essentially, that's going to be the growth. 90% of the growth will be in the top 10%, and the rest, business as usual.
And then we go straight to the pit paying out the top 20. Can you give us an idea of how big these fields are going to be for the elevated events, A, and B, if you're on the lower tier, untop player, how do you graduate? How do you move into that top if you're not?
Well, just be more popular. Have more people like you, then you can move up and become part of the elevated tour. This is exactly pointing out that what Jay initially said at the beginning of this video, that you can just be hungry and driven and then push out a bigger name, is untrue.
Playing in the biggest events.
Well, when we're talking about 23, we have you see that the 8 elevated events that we have, plus the players, we're adding 4. We haven't identified the eligibility criteria yet for those events, but we're not going to.
Jay hasn't identified the eligibility criteria for the future events because he wants to have it malleable at this point. You want to figure out which players you want in and then make the criterion based around those players. Something along the lines of, you should have the name of an animal. Your first name should be the name of a jungle cat. Remember, Tiger won the first Player Impact Program without playing in a single PGA Tour tournament except for that father-son tournament.
The other thing was just, you haven't determined if some of these events will be no cut. Like, would the Memorial possibly be a no cut event? The Arnold Palmer?
Interesting that the reporter brings up the Memorial. The Memorial has a lot of sponsors exemptions. I've already done a video on it. Jack Nicklaus, Lee Trevino, a few others are still eligible because they have this other category. They have this clause or category in there where it's pre-1970 major winners. This just shows you how you can rig the system to include whoever you want. Just make the criterion the people you want in and they'll get in. And that's what this Player Impact Program will likely do. Now you can just get whoever you want in, just shoehorn them in, but not based on their golf performance, based on the fact that you want them in the tournament. You don't want to call it appearance fees, and you want to make it seem like it's about meritocracy rather than what it is, which is a sponsor's exemption.
Or would they remain 120 player as they've been?
They will remain. There will be a cut at those events in 2023.
There will be a cut at those events in 2023. In 2024, are we looking at reduced fields, no cut events, kind of like LIV? I'm sure Big Boy Pants Golf will revisit the topic of the Player Impact Program when more details about it become more concrete. The title of the video will probably be something along the lines of, it's gobbledygook or it's pure gibberish. While you're subscribing right now, keep in mind that Rory Golden Boy McIlroy is now a lifetime member because the new changes also affect winners of 20 or more PGA Tour tournaments. You no longer have to have 15 years on tour. And I'm sure the only guy who benefits from this new rule change is in fact Rory McIlroy.